The story begins with the main character describing a bizarre scene in front of him. From his perspective, no matter how anyone looks at it, it's a demonic beast beneath a crimson and violet moon, while a blade drips with fresh blood, and a girl with almost transparent golden hair stands there in a military uniform. Looking at this scene, he becomes convinced that this world is the paradise he has been searching for all along. Meanwhile, he is busy drawing his manga and starts discussing ideas with his friend, wondering if bringing in the jet-black mad girl, Aimer, to wipe out the Domegas cult in a single move would be too much. However, he immediately concludes that the cult is not that weak. This is where his identity is revealed. His name is Yamada Tsuyoshi, 14 years old, and his sacred name is Sayonji Ao. As he continues working on his manga, he explains that the founder of the cult, Dolmagisvan Seahorse, is such a brilliant strategist that he would have predicted a surprise attack 23 days in advance. The more he looks at his work, the more convinced he becomes that all of his storylines are connecting perfectly. In his mind, this is no longer just another manga. No, this is becoming a true masterpiece. In fact, he imagines it becoming such an overwhelming work that the entire world will fall into despair knowing they will never witness anything greater. His imagination continues running wild as he thinks about enchanted cloths guarding holy eyes, sacred swords and chains woven by 73 mages. Then he reflects on himself, believing he is the one this era has been waiting for. Yet he also realizes that many people chosen like him eventually abandon their dreams, accept reality, and turn into ordinary working adults. Soon the scene shifts to his life as a teacher. People around him praise his work, pointing out that despite teaching for only 3 years, his students' grades continue improving and parents constantly speak highly of him. Someone even comments on his flashy black kimono, while the principal proudly states that the school is fortunate to have such an educator and expects even greater things from him in the future. But when Yamada reaches the rooftop and opens a soda can, it becomes clear that he has no interest in any of that praise. The principal's words keep echoing in his head about being the pride of the school and living up to expectations. Frustrated, he grabs his head and wonders who actually cares about any of those things. What he truly wants is something completely different. He wants to stop human trafficking, cut off terrorist funding, and save talented students from falling into danger. According to him, that is the real reason he became a teacher. Deep inside, he still considers himself 14 years old. Everything around him appears peaceful, yet somehow the school feels suffocating. Then, just as he begins walking back downstairs, something impossible happens. The sky suddenly tears open. A gigantic eye appears and stares directly at him. Like seriously, what is going on here? Before he can even process it, countless hands covered with eyes emerge from the rift. The mysterious being introduces itself as the Gate of Covenant and promises to guide him to a world he truly desires, a world where despair does not exist. Moments later, those hands grab him and drag him into the portal while his drink falls helplessly onto the ground. Then everything changes. It is now nighttime, and 2 moons hang in the sky. A portal opens overhead and throws Yamada violently onto the ground below. As he slowly gets back up, confusion fills his mind. Where exactly has he arrived? Looking around, he realizes he is standing inside a forest. But not just any forest. Something feels different. Then he spots a goblin nearby and immediately freezes. He reaches out and touches a piece of gold, unable to believe what he is seeing. He touches it again just to make sure. To his surprise, it feels completely real. The goblin simply stares at him while a huge smile forms on his face. He becomes convinced that he has finally done it. He is truly the chosen one. This has to be the fantasy world he always dreamed of. Unfortunately, his excitement lasts only a few seconds because more goblins start appearing. Then even more. Before long, an entire horde surrounds him. His confidence instantly disappears. Of all places, why here? Trying desperately to stay calm, he starts talking to the goblins, offering jobs and promising to change their lives. Unsurprisingly, the goblins are not interested in career opportunities. They rush straight toward him. Just when things seem hopeless, a terrifying black power sweeps across the battlefield and instantly kills every goblin nearby. Yamada turns around in shock and sees a girl arriving at the scene. She explains that she received reports of a monster outbreak and came immediately to investigate. After questioning why a random rookie is standing in the middle of such danger, she warns him to stay back before he gets himself killed. Then she charges forward and begins cutting down goblins one after another with overwhelming skill. Watching her fight leaves Yamada stunned. Golden hair, military uniform, a sword larger than her own body. Wait a second. He knows exactly who she is. When the girl complains that the goblins keep regenerating no matter how many times she cuts them down, Yamada immediately recognizes her as Aimer de Valencia. She is surprised that a stranger knows her name and reminds him to stay out of the battle. Meanwhile, Yamada realizes that everything is matching perfectly, even her name. As the battle continues, Aimer worries that the goblins will eventually spread into a nearby village and cause massive destruction. At that moment, Yamada reveals that fighting here is pointless, because the real source of the problem is located inside the village itself. Naturally, Aimer becomes suspicious and demands to know how he could possibly know that. Yet Yamada confidently tells her that if she wants to win, she simply needs to trust him. After staring at him for a moment, she reluctantly agrees, although she warns him that if they find nothing there, she will happily use him as monster bait. Honestly, that's not exactly reassuring. Soon they arrive at the village, where the villagers immediately gather around Aimer for help. While everyone is busy explaining how the goblin attacks have become unbearable, Yamada quietly studies the surroundings. Then an elderly village chief approaches and expresses relief that Aimer has arrived. Without hesitation, Yamada points directly at him and identifies him as the mastermind behind everything. The entire village falls silent. People are horrified. After all, the chief has spent years protecting them. Even Aimer struggles to understand what Yamada is talking about. However, Yamada insists that the chief is actually a necromancer who uses goblin corpses as spies. The villagers reject the accusation immediately, but Yamada remains firm. He reveals details that nobody should know, including a payment of 50 gold coins used to manipulate events. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes. The villagers slowly begin looking at the chief differently. Then the old man finally drops his act. Admitting that he intended to dispose of everyone, eventually, he unleashes his true power. The ground splits apart and countless goblins emerge from beneath the village. Declaring that his freedom will never be taken away, the necromancer begins his attack. Yamada calmly identifies him as Alinstar Jackfield, a pitiful old man consumed by greed, before turning to Aimer and informing her that the rest is her responsibility. Without hesitation, Aimer draws her sword and takes control of the battlefield. The necromancer laughs and orders his goblins forward, but she immediately responds with her special technique, Dark Blade. One after another, goblins fall before her attacks. However, the necromancer continuously resurrects them, turning the battle into an endless cycle. Then Aimer notices the true source of the problem, his hands. In a single move, she cuts them off. After remarking that 50 gold coins was far too small a reward for dealing with this mess, she cleanly beheads him and sends him off to dance with the trash in the next world. The moment he dies, all the remaining goblins begin rotting away. Their bodies melt into the ground and the battle finally ends. The villagers erupt in celebration, praising Aimer for saving them once again. However, Aimer's attention shifts toward Yamada. She apologizes for doubting him and thanks him for helping save everyone. More importantly, she wants answers. Who is he? How did he know the truth about the village chief? As she waits for a response, Yamada smiles to himself. Just as he suspected, this is the very world he created. Every script, every event, every story is unfolding exactly as he remembers. With complete confidence, he introduces himself as Sayonji Ao, the savior destined to eradicate evil from this world and reveal the truth to everyone. The scene suddenly shifts 10 years into the past, where Yamada is excitedly looking through his manga and thinking about how incredibly interesting it is. In his mind, that only makes sense because he is the one who wrote the story. And more importantly, he created Aimer, a character he considers strong, cute, and absolutely perfect. He proudly reflects on how he poured all of his knowledge into a little girl and wonders if that isn't amazing. His friend agrees, and Yamada continues praising his masterpiece, explaining that its Dark Blade heroine is only 9 years old, yet she defeats terrifying demonic forces far stronger than herself. To him, it's the ultimate story of justice. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the other world where Aimer stares at Yamada in complete confusion after hearing him call himself a savior. She has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Then, before she can say anything else, Yamada confidently walks forward and places a hand on her head. He starts acting as if he understands all of her struggles, thinking it must have been difficult for her to handle everything alone and reassuring her that now that he has arrived, she no longer has anything to worry about because from this point onward, they are together. However, before he can finish his dramatic speech, Aimer responds with a powerful kick straight into his stomach. Yamada is launched backward and crashes onto the ground. When he looks up in confusion, Aimer immediately plants her foot on his head and reminds him that she is the captain of a highly respected squad, and that some random punk has absolutely no right to pat her on the head. Then, just to make sure the message gets through, she delivers another kick directly to his face. Honestly, welcome to another world, Yamada. Things are clearly not going the way he imagined. After getting back up, he admits that it has been a long time since anyone treated him like that. Aimer watches him suspiciously while Yamada suddenly decides that, only for her, he will reveal who he truly is. The scene then shifts to a tavern where a bartender asks what he would like to drink. Without hesitation, Yamada orders a crimson eye-red dragon on the rocks. Nearby, Aimer notices him staring in her direction and immediately questions what exactly he's looking at. She assumes he's about to order something childish because she herself is sitting there eating ice cream. Yamada quickly insists that there is nothing childish about it and claims it is actually quite charming. At the same time, he can't help thinking that she is unbelievably rude, yet somehow still incredibly cute. As Aimer continues eating her ice cream, she asks why the so-called savior came to her village in the first place. While taking a drink, Yamada responds by acting as though his goal is simply to protect people's smiles and defeat evil forces. Unsurprisingly, Aimer has no idea what he's talking about and demands a clear answer. This time, Yamada puts down his drink and directly tells her that he wants her. The entire tavern instantly falls silent. Villagers nearby turn toward Aimer in complete shock while she immediately blushes and reminds him that she is only 9 years old. Realizing how that sounded, Yamada quickly apologizes and clarifies that he wants her strength. Now the villagers begin whispering among themselves, amazed because they have never seen Aimer make an embarrassed face before. Aimer then asks whether he is trying to recruit her simply because she is powerful and wants to know why exactly he needs her strength. Yamada praises her question and then casually reveals that he wants to wage war. Hearing that, Aimer immediately asks whether he has any experience with something as serious as war. Yamada responds with complete confidence, declaring that he is a man who triumphed in the entrance exam war. The tavern instantly goes silent again. Everyone looks confused. What is an entrance exam war? Who is even fighting in it? As villagers begin whispering among themselves, Yamada explains that entire nations participate. Naturally, this explanation only confuses everyone even more. Then he casually reveals that his IQ is 170. Aimer immediately asks what that even means. Fortunately, the bartender claims to have read ancient texts explaining the concept. According to him, IQ measures a person's intellect, and the higher the number, the more of a genius they are. Hearing this, Aimer becomes even more surprised. She starts wondering whether this man has actually reached the limits of human intelligence. Could he really be the real deal? Or is he simply very confident? Yamada notices her hesitation and directly points out that she seems to be doubting him. Aimer openly admits that she is. After all, anybody can make big claims. According to her, even monkeys make noise all day long, so she isn't going to be fooled that easily. At that point, Yamada decides it is time to prove himself. He suddenly stands up, causing Aimer to wonder whether the alcohol has gone to his head. Instead of answering, Yamada looks out the window toward the red moon and the teal moon hanging in the sky. Then he calmly announces that a saber-toothed tiger is approaching. The villagers immediately stare at him in disbelief. However, Yamada continues explaining that the mauled piso grass is stirring, the forest levels are rising, and those conditions are driving the tiger's excitement to its peak. Aimer immediately dismisses the idea. According to her, creatures like that hate humans and would never come near the village, especially after all the noise that happened earlier in the day. The possibility seems almost non-existent. Yamada simply asks whether she wants to make a bet. Aimer confidently accepts and even declares that if she somehow loses, she will strip in front of him. Convinced there is no way she can be wrong, she walks toward the door while telling herself that such a thing could never happen. Then suddenly, it happens. A real saber-toothed tiger appears. Aimer freezes in shock. No way. It actually came. Nearby, a mother and her child are trapped in danger as the tiger prepares to attack. Reacting instantly, Aimer jumps in front of them and raises her sword. She declares that any beast attacking humans must be eliminated, and with a single strike, she cuts off the tiger's head. Just like that, the threat is over. As the villagers recover from their shock, Yamada casually walks outside and praises her performance. According to him, that is exactly why she deserves to become his right hand. At this point, Aimer's thoughts are racing. First, he exposed the village chief. Then he accurately predicted the tiger. What exactly is his ability? Is he actually some kind of genius? Is he truly special? Before she can think further, Yamada suddenly reminds her about the bet and points out that she promised to take her clothes off if she lost. Aimer immediately panics and orders him to shut up. Nice try, Yamada. That was never going to happen. Trying to change the subject, Aimer asks who exactly he wants to fight if he is so serious about starting a war. She assumes he probably has some small conflict in mind. Instead, Yamada gives an answer so ridiculous that it leaves her speechless. Looking directly at her, he calmly declares that he wants to go to war against her nation itself, the Holy Empire of Wolfgrand. The scene shifts once again, and a carriage can be seen traveling through a dense forest. Inside, Yamada and Aimer continue their journey together. As the carriage gently moves along the road, Yamada finds himself staring at Aimer. In his mind, she is genuinely adorable. From this angle, she honestly looks like a fairy. Everything about her matches the image he originally envisioned. After all, she is a character he created during what he considers his creative prime. Not a single detail feels wrong to him. In fact, he even starts wondering if he should touch her hair just once. Just for research purposes, obviously. Unfortunately for him, Aimer immediately catches him staring. Her eyes narrow, and she quickly warns him not to get any strange ideas about her. Caught completely off guard, Yamada casually claims that he was only passing the time by solving Fermat's theorem. Somehow, that explanation fails to impress her. Aimer immediately plants her foot down and points her sword directly at him. She reminds him that he has officially declared war against Wolfgrand. In other words, he is essentially a traitor. Under normal circumstances, someone like him would already be dead. The only reason she is tolerating his existence is because of what he did for her village. Even then, she is keeping a very close eye on him. She then demands to know why exactly he intends to drag his claws toward Wolfgrand. Yamada simply smiles. Instead of giving a real answer, he claims she will understand when the time comes. Then he calmly tells her that if she truly cannot trust him, she is free to cut off his head right now. He even goes as far as saying that if it is for Aimer's sake, he would gladly give up his life. Surprisingly, that answer actually earns a small smile from her. For the moment, she lets the matter go. Then the carriage driver suddenly calls out, informing Captain Aimer that they will be arriving soon. Not long afterward, the pair finally reach the Holy Empire of Wolfgrand and enter Area 27. The streets are packed with people. Merchants are shouting from every direction while trying to sell their goods and services. One particularly enthusiastic man is even offering to become a punching bag for 100 geller per minute. Honestly, that's one way to make a living. As Yamada walks through the area, he looks around in amazement. Every detail is exactly as he remembers. The level of recreation is unbelievable. It is almost as if someone copied everything straight out of his imagination. Meanwhile, Aimer explains that the entire district falls under her jurisdiction, and that today happens to be their weekly unit training day. As captain, she has duties to attend to. Before moving on, she warns Yamada not to wander off, because he is still very much under her supervision. Yamada casually assures her that he knows and claims he is simply savoring every moment. Soon, the scene shifts toward Area 27's special training grounds. Soldiers are sparring all around the field while intense training sessions take place everywhere. Aimer steps forward and announces that anyone is free to challenge her because she wants to see how much her soldiers have improved. Almost immediately, one soldier rushes forward to attack. Aimer effortlessly avoids the strike and praises the soldier, Elsa, for improving significantly. She points out that Elsa's attacks now carry far more weight than before. Elsa happily credits all of that progress to Aimer's training before confidently declaring that this time she intends to win. Aimer responds by pointing out that those are some very big words. Then, in a single powerful strike, she destroys Elsa's armor and calmly notes that her guard is still sloppy. Elsa can only laugh awkwardly and admit that she failed to land even one hit, which is exactly what she expected from her captain. Even so, Aimer acknowledges her growth and officially praises her vice-captain for becoming much stronger. Elsa gratefully thanks her. Then Elsa notices someone sitting nearby with a strange smile on his face. Curious, she asks who the mysterious man is. Hearing that, Yamada finally stands up and applauds the training session. He openly praises the unit and claims that their discipline is exceptional, exactly what he expected from Aimer's squad. The soldiers immediately become suspicious. More importantly, they are shocked that some random stranger is casually calling their captain by her first name. Questions immediately start flying from every direction. Aimer awkwardly explains that Yamada is simply someone she happens to be traveling with for certain reasons. Unsurprisingly, absolutely nobody accepts that explanation. Elsa immediately asks who he really is. In response, Yamada proudly introduces himself as someone known as the Savior. Somehow, that only makes things more confusing. Then Aimer casually mentions that according to him, he once triumphed in something called the Entrance Exam War. Instantly, every soldier looks completely lost. The Entrance Exam War? Like seriously, what is that even supposed to mean? Just as everyone starts questioning it, one girl suddenly claims she has heard of something similar before. Elsa quickly points out that their resident history nerd might actually know what she is talking about. The girl explains that on a distant continent there exists a conflict known as the Six Wars, and some people refer to it as the Examination War. Hearing this explanation leaves the soldiers stunned. Meanwhile, Yamada quietly wonders whether he truly came from such a place. Then an old memory resurfaces. He remembers a video game where he conquered 3 nations in a single night. When he casually mentions this achievement, the soldiers stare at him as if he has completely lost his mind. 3 nations in one night? Yeah, that is definitely not helping his credibility. Elsa immediately refuses to believe him and questions why anyone would trust such an outrageous claim. However, in the middle of all this, she notices something unexpected. Aimer actually looks embarrassed. The sight is so rare that Elsa almost forgets the conversation entirely. Captain Aimer, embarrassed. Now that's something nobody sees every day. Watching her reaction, Yamada cannot help thinking that her expressions are absolutely priceless. Unfortunately for him, the rest of the soldiers are far less entertained. Elsa angrily accuses him of tricking their captain and insists that Lady Aimer belongs with them, not with some suspicious stranger making ridiculous claims. The other soldiers quickly agree. According to them, anyone can boast and make grand speeches. They are not going to be fooled that easily. Instead of getting offended, Yamada actually seems pleased. In fact, this is exactly the reaction he was hoping for. Then, without warning, he casually drops a piece of information that completely changes the atmosphere. He states that 3 days from now, Aimer's unit will be deployed to the Valish region. Elsa immediately freezes. How could he possibly know that? The deployment orders have not even been discussed publicly yet. Of all things, how does he know that? Before anyone can demand answers, Yamada confidently declares that when they arrive there, he will finally show them the dazzling extent of his strength. The soldiers can only stare at him. Some look skeptical. Some look confused. Some look outright irritated. But one thing is certain. Whether they believe him or not, every single person on that training ground is now paying attention to Yamada. The scene shifts to the Valish region, specifically the Blue Shadow Coastal District. A giant octopus-like monster is rampaging through the area, but Aimer steps forward and takes it down with a single strike. Just like that, the battle is over. Honestly, the poor monster barely gets enough screen time to make an impression. As the creature crashes to the ground, Aimer casually comments on how incredibly hot the weather is today. Nearby residents immediately rush over to thank her, admitting they never expected the Valkyrie squad to come all the way here to help them. Aimer humbly brushes aside the praise and reminds them that there is no need to be formal. They are all citizens of Wolfgrand, after all. She then asks how things have been on their side. Around the same time, Elsa and the other soldiers finish dealing with the remaining monsters. Elsa confidently reports that they have already eliminated the last one. If anything, she expected something far more challenging. None of these monsters really pushed them at all. She proudly credits their success to Captain Aimer's daily training sessions. Aimer agrees and bluntly reminds everyone that if they struggle against opponents at this level, they might as well pack their bags and go home. Meanwhile, Yamada sits atop a horse, quietly observing everything. Looking around, he notes that nobody here seems capable of matching Aimer and her squad. In his mind, he remembers that this region was originally supposed to contain powerful level 60 class beasts, yet Aimer's unit cuts through them like they're completing tutorial missions. Then again, this is exactly what he expects from her squad. With the immediate threat gone, Aimer suggests using the remaining time productively. The soldiers stare at her as if she has just committed a crime. They have literally finished fighting monsters, and somehow she is already talking about more training. Like seriously, does this woman recharge by exercising? Before long, however, the atmosphere becomes much lighter. The squad moves closer to the coast and begins spending some time together while still pretending it counts as training. One of the girls calls for a pass while the others laugh and compete with each other. Even Aimer joins in. When someone points out that she seems to be having fun, she immediately insists that this is all part of their training routine. Of course, nobody believes that for even a second. The captain can call it training all she wants. Everyone else sees a beach day wearing armor. Watching from nearby, Yamada can't help admiring the scene. The ocean stretches endlessly into the distance. The sunlight reflects across the waves. The squad laughs and jokes with one another. Everything feels strangely peaceful. This isn't the kind of content he originally imagined when creating his story, but somehow it works. In fact, it works a little too well. For a moment, he simply sits back and enjoys the view. Eventually, the girls notice him staring from the sidelines and call him over. Aimer points out that he has been watching them for quite a while and asks whether he wants to join. Elsa immediately teases him, suggesting that he has probably been watching the whole time. Yamada casually plays along, which earns him an instant glare from Aimer. She quickly tells everyone to stop saying weird things. Unfortunately, that only makes things more awkward. As expected, the conversation soon drifts into one of Yamada's bizarre stories. He starts talking about strange encounters from his past, including experiences that sound completely unbelievable. The squad can only stare at him. Aimer shakes her head and quietly wonders why adults always seem so weird. Elsa immediately tells her not to take anything he says seriously because he has a habit of making outrageous claims. At this point, even the squad has started treating half of Yamada's stories like urban legends. Then Elsa suddenly remembers something important. 3 days earlier, Yamada confidently promised that he would reveal his true strength. Yet so far, he hasn't actually done anything impressive. According to her, All he has done is make mysterious predictions, say confusing things, and somehow flirt with danger every chance he gets. Aimer realizes she has been wondering the exact same thing. Yamada, however, responds with a question of his own. Are they really sure all the monsters are gone? The mood changes instantly. A soldier suddenly comes sprinting toward them in a panic. The carefree atmosphere vanishes immediately. She urgently reports that a massive threat is approaching from the sea. Everyone turns toward the ocean. In the distance, something enormous is moving through the water. At first, it looks like a shadow. Then it gets closer and closer. With every passing second, the creature becomes more terrifying. The waves themselves seem to react to its presence. Aimer's expression hardens the moment she sees it. She recognizes it immediately. This isn't some random monster. This isn't another cleanup mission. This is the true lord of the coastline, the real target of their deployment, the creature they are actually here to kill. For the first time all day, even the squad falls silent. Then Yamada calmly looks toward the horizon and identifies the creature without hesitation. The silver whale. And just like that, the peaceful beach atmosphere, the laughter, the teasing, all of it disappears. Because standing before them now is a monster powerful enough to turn an ordinary mission into a nightmare. And somehow, Yamada doesn't look surprised at all. The scene continues with Aimer and her squad standing near the coastline as the massive creature known as the silver whale finally reveals itself completely. The monster is absolutely gigantic. Even from a distance, its sheer size feels overwhelming. Elsa stares at it in disbelief and estimates that the creature is nearly 200 meters long. Honestly, at this point it barely even looks like a whale anymore. It looks like an entire moving island with anger issues. Elsa immediately turns toward Aimer and asks what they should do. Aimer, however, remains completely unfazed. She calmly declares that it does not matter what kind of monster appears before them because the Valkyrie squad does not know the meaning of defeat. Nearby, Yamada watches the scene unfold while quietly thinking to himself that this really is peak Aimer behavior. Even her overconfidence somehow feels adorable. Seriously, only Aimer could look at a 200-meter sea monster and react like she just got mildly inconvenienced. Aimer then asks Elsa whether she can handle it. Without hesitation, Elsa proudly declares that she is the second strongest member of the Valkyrie squad, and that nothing is impossible for her. As vice captain, she insists that this hunt belongs to her and confidently tells everyone to leave it to her. However, the moment she prepares herself mentally, her thoughts begin drifting somewhere else entirely. Instead of focusing on the monster, she starts thinking about Aimer again. Immediately, the other squad members notice the familiar expression on her face and panic. Once again, the vice captain has entered her weird emotional daydream mode at the worst possible timing imaginable. Unfortunately for everyone involved, the silver whale chooses that exact moment to attack. The giant beast begins forming a massive sphere of fire inside its mouth. One of the girls instantly warns the squad that the enemy is about to make its move. Suddenly, Elsa snaps back to reality just as the giant blast fires directly toward them. The explosion tears across the battlefield. One squad member gets thrown backward while the others barely manage to dodge in time. Panic spreads through the group as they realize the whale is also capable of firing ice magic afterward. Yeah, because apparently being gigantic wasn't already unfair enough. Elsa quickly checks whether everyone is alright. Nearby, one of the girls notices a massive stone barrier protecting part of the area. Another squad member explains that it is their earthen wall technique and says they might survive if they manage to maintain it properly. However, another question immediately arises. Where is Aimer? During the previous blast, she took a direct hit. The squad finally spots her lying motionless nearby, and Elsa immediately panics after seeing the condition she is in. For a brief moment, the atmosphere becomes tense. Then suddenly, Aimer gets back up, furious. At this point, the entire coastline can practically feel her anger radiating outward. She loudly declares that the stupid whale is going to pay for this. Then, without waiting for anyone, she charges straight toward the monster. The sheer pressure from her sword slash is so powerful that even the ocean itself splits apart. One of the nearby captains watches in shock and comments that Aimer's shockwave literally separated the sea. Aimer screams at the whale to die already and launches another massive attack. However, Elsa quickly realizes something is wrong. The slash gets deflected because the target is simply too far away. That realization only makes Aimer even angrier. She starts yelling at the whale to come closer so she can tear it into pieces personally. Honestly, at this point, the whale might need emotional support more than physical defense. Elsa quickly tries calming Aimer down while the rest of the squad desperately thinks of another strategy. One member suggests approaching the creature by ship instead. However, another captain immediately rejects the idea and explains that the waves are far too violent. The moment they enter the sea, the ship would instantly be destroyed. Amid all this chaos, Yamada calmly walks over toward Aimer. Instead of talking about battle strategies first, he casually points out that a woman should not be dressed like that. Aimer looks confused for a second before realizing the previous attacks damaged her clothing badly. The moment she notices, she immediately panics in embarrassment. Meanwhile, Yamada calmly tells her that if she stays like this, she is going to catch a cold and make things even harder for herself. Somehow, in the middle of a life-or-death battle against a giant sea monster, this conversation is happening completely seriously. Still flustered, Aimer quickly asks Yamada whether he actually has a way to defeat the silver whale. Yamada finally reveals that he possesses a secret art, one he sealed away ever since the entrance exam war. Hearing that instantly catches everyone's attention, especially Elsa's. A secret art he never even used during the war itself. Now even the squad becomes curious about what kind of ability this could possibly be. Then Yamada finally reveals its name, the Azure Wall Strategy. The moment he says it, the atmosphere changes again. Aimer immediately demands that he show them this so-called secret art. Yamada calmly responds that if he does, he will have to personally lead the formation himself. Then, with complete confidence, he steps forward and declares that they will slay the beast and carve a road to victory. And for the first time since the silver whale appeared, the squad actually begins feeling hopeful again. The scene continues with Aimer staring out toward the raging ocean while the massive silver whale continues moving through the waves. She quickly points out the biggest problem. The sea is far too violent for ships, and the whale itself is positioned way beyond the reach of her attacks. Then she turns toward Yamada and asks how exactly they are supposed to get close to that thing. More importantly, she warns him not to say something ridiculous, like flying toward it. Yamada simply laughs. Of course he was going to say something ridiculous, but surprisingly, this time he doesn't. Instead, he calmly explains that his strategy is actually very simple. They are going to carve a path straight through the sea and advance forward until Aimer reaches the creature within her killing range. Honestly, hearing someone casually describe cutting a road through the ocean like it's basic construction work is already insane enough. Without wasting another second, Yamada immediately starts directing the surrounding squads into position. He orders everyone to stop hesitating because time is extremely valuable. The soldiers quickly begin moving according to his instructions. Meanwhile, Elsa quietly walks over to Aimer and asks whether she genuinely believes this plan will work. According to her, relying on Yamada's strange strategies feels dangerous, and eventually they may need to take matters into their own hands. Aimer pauses for a moment before admitting something surprising. She knows Yamada acts like a complete idiot most of the time, but somehow things always end up working out for him anyway. Honestly, even she sounds confused by it. Before the conversation can continue, the squad suddenly notices the silver whale preparing another attack. The giant beast begins gathering power once again. Immediately, Aimer pulls out her sword and prepares herself. She loudly declares that the whale is probably expecting her to cut it down directly. Everyone braces themselves for another collision. However, just as the whale unleashes its attack, Aimer suddenly reveals that this time, the whale itself is not her target. The next moment, her slash crashes directly into the ocean. Instantly, the sea itself splits apart. Massive waves separate as if something invisible is forcing them backward. Aimer then shouts Yamada's name at the top of her lungs. Without hesitation, Yamada immediately orders the surrounding squads to activate their formations. At once, the soldiers begin using earth magic, raising enormous walls from beneath the sea. Giant stone structures emerge one after another, stabilizing the divided water and forming a pathway directly through the ocean itself. The entire battlefield freezes in shock. Even the other squad members can barely believe what they are seeing. Elsa stares at the newly created path and admits that she genuinely cannot believe he actually pulled it off. Somehow, Yamada literally created a road through the sea. And worse for the silver whale, the monster is now trapped. Yamada calmly looks ahead and reminds everyone that just as promised, he has opened a road to victory. Then he tells Aimer to go fulfill her duty. Aimer immediately tells him to shut up before warning everyone to watch carefully and burn the sight into their memories. Yeah, she is absolutely locked in now. The silver whale prepares another massive attack, forcing the squad to react quickly. One member warns that the barrier walls need to expand because the previous strike got deflected due to the distance. However, before anyone else can act, Aimer suddenly charges forward at full speed. The pressure around her becomes overwhelming as she screams at the monster to taste this attack for itself. Then, in a single devastating strike, Aimer directly hits the silver whale in the head. The entire coastline shakes. For a brief second, everything goes silent. Then the impossible happens. The gigantic silver whale splits cleanly into two pieces. Just like that, the true lord of the coastline is defeated. The squad stares in disbelief while the remains of the monster collapse into the ocean below. Meanwhile, Aimer stands there completely unfazed, as if slicing apart giant sea monsters is just another normal day for her. Then, without missing a beat, she casually announces that tonight they are all eating silver whale sashimi. Honestly, after all that destruction, that's probably the most terrifying thing she says the entire battle. The celebration completely takes over the coastline as huge feasts are prepared everywhere after the squad's victory. Food is stacked across long tables, soldiers are laughing loudly, and the atmosphere feels more like a festival than a battlefield. Standing in the middle of it all, Yamada dramatically raises his glass and proudly announces that the celebration is being held in honor of their complete victory and the glory that will forever remain carved into this land before loudly calling for a toast. Honestly, he treats even a simple dinner like the final scene of a legendary war movie. Meanwhile, Aimer takes a bite of the silver whale's meat and immediately freezes in surprise. She genuinely cannot believe how delicious it tastes. Around her, everyone completely dives into the food like starving warriors who have not eaten in weeks. One man happily tells everyone not to hold back and eat as much as they want, because there is still plenty left. A squad member then walks over to Yamada and offers him a drink, reminding him that he was basically the star of the operation this time. However, Yamada casually refuses and complains that cheap alcohol is not to his liking. According to him, if they had brought out a bottle of White Magician instead, he would have gladly accepted it. Naturally, everyone around him becomes curious and starts asking what kind of drink that even is. Is it expensive? Is it rare? Yamada then starts speaking like a mysterious old legend again, claiming that simple alcohol means nothing to someone like him because he once endured something called the Divine Crown Soulbreaker and even drank an essence brewed from birds and dragons. The entire table goes silent. Birds and dragons? Like seriously, what kind of terrifying beverage menu does this guy live with? The squad members stare at him in total confusion while trying to figure out whether he is lying, insane, or somehow both at the same time. Then Yamada casually adds that he even drank 8 cups of it before, which only makes the situation worse. At this point, nobody knows whether to admire him or call for medical assistance. Nearby, several soldiers are already half drunk and collapsing onto the tables while Elsa starts worrying that if the celebration continues like this, the squad's public image is absolutely doomed. Meanwhile, another squad member is so drunk she can barely even sit properly anymore. Eventually, the noise of the feast fades into the background as the scene shifts toward the quiet shoreline. Yamada stands alone beside the ocean, silently staring at the moon reflecting across the dark water. After noticing Aimer nearby, he calmly tells her that she should get some sleep too, because the battle earlier must have exhausted her. Aimer immediately points out that he is not sleeping either and asks why he is standing around all alone in the middle of the night like some suspicious wandering philosopher. Then she slowly walks closer to him and quietly asks the question that has clearly been bothering her for a long time now. Is he truly her ally or her enemy? Yamada looks toward her for a moment, but before he can answer, Aimer sighs and admits that asking him directly is probably pointless anyway because he never gives normal answers. She then steps into the water, only to immediately panic because the ocean at night is freezing cold. A second later, she splashes water toward Yamada and teasingly tells him that he should cool off too. Watching her, Yamada quietly thinks to himself about what he truly wants from this world. He does not actually want to overthrow Wolfgrand. He does not even want to rule the world. His real goal is far simpler and far more personal. He wants to stand beside Aimer as her strategist, and someday make her the emperor of the nation itself.
Here I am, know it's been a while.